Welcome back to Purrfect Takes. I'm your host, Stephen Patton, joined as always by my co host and dear friend, Jacob McGuire. And today, after week one, we are right back where we've been the last couple years after week one, and that's 0-1. No win or one in the win column. Jacob, how are you feeling? Because I was kind of depressed on Sunday, but at the same time, I felt like I had prepared myself for this because there was nothing up to this point that led me to believe that we weren't the same old Panthers.
Well, you can speak for yourself as it pertains to wins. My fantasy team has a one in the win column this week, so I can at least take solace in that, take refuge in my fantasy team, which I think had the second most points in our league. But I agree with you with the Panthers. There were opportunities there, I think, throughout the game, and at each juncture, there would be a Bryce Young mistake, there was an Austin Court mistake on pretty much every single play. An Xavier Leggett mistake, like bad protections on offense. Then on defense, I thought they played decent against the pass, but against the run, another 200 point or 200 yard plus performance. And people are saying, well, 70 of it was on one play. You shouldn't allow them to have a 70-yard rush, right? That's not a bonus for the defense that they just happened to pull that off. Another 200-yard performance. I think this is seven in a row going back to last year. In the 35 games in which Ejiro Evero has called our defense, in 26 of those, the defense or the other team has rushed for more than 120 yards. And this was just another one of those. And it's especially concerning given just how bad their run game was last year. I know Liam Cohen's creative, but their offensive line and running game or running backs are not good enough to be putting up 200 yards against a decent defense.
The ETN run is kind of what I think broke the game wide open. That was kind of what allowed them to build a double digit lead and hold it for the remainder of the game. And ETN, just to kind of give our listeners a kind of comparison or a number to kind of give you a footing of like what EPA would give that play. And it's around 4 points. A 70-yard run is equating to about 4 points. And I think they ended the drive with a Brian Thomas end around. And it was just their ability to find holes in the defense and run on us. And the fact that we are still unable to stop the run after the investments we made on this defensive line, we saw the immediate dividends of investing in the offensive line last year. We are not seeing it on the defensive side. And to me, that's a little bit alarming. That's a little bit concerning. And I don't know if that means Ejiro Evero's now officially on the hot seat and could be canned at some point in the next few weeks. I don't know if that means that from a personnel standpoint, something's going on. But yeah, we talk about Turk Wharton being banged up. Bobby Brown at one point went to the sideline. If we're gonna have injuries too with the guys that we brought on, we're just gonna end up where we were last year. And at that point, it's like, where do you go? Because offensively, there wasn't a lot to go on either, and there were a lot of miscues. So, at what point are we going to become a serious franchise and start playing NFL football?
I want to give some of the additions credit. Turk Wharton, when he was in, I thought did a good job against the run. Better than I expected him coming
He
from
had a great tackle for
the
loss on
Chiefs.
the
Yeah,
third
and
down.
and that wasn't his calling card with the Chiefs. He was a pass rusher, and I thought he played pretty well, but he only played around half the snaps. We're going to be missing him for 2 to 4 weeks over the next couple games here. I think it's a hamstring injury, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, Bobby Brown, the nose tackle we signed, didn't play nose tackle for the entire game. He also played half the snaps. Nick Scott, the safety that was retained, more of a special teams guy, who's an excellent communicator, was the sole person responsible for missing the tackle on the ETN big run. And he played 100% of the snaps. He did not come off the field on defense, and he was quite bad in every single regard. Like we know how the defense is. Derek Brown, I think, played well, so getting him back, I think the goal is potentially if you play the players in the right spots, like as Bobby Brown, Derek Brown, once Turk Wharton's back, maybe the defensive line gets better. But other than that, I think we know what this team is. The more concerning stat to me is that Trevor Lawrence was the least pressured quarterback of any QB this past week. That has to change if we want to be able to win because Trevor Lawrence doesn't handle pressure well. And when we go against QBs that do handle pressure well, that's going to be an issue. I'm not saying Kyler is like the best pressure handler, but he can at least get away when pressured. So that's going to have to improve. The offensive side of the ball, I'm more hopeful about because there were opportunities there, but there were also much worse mistakes. And I think it goes to miscues, preparation. Austin Corbett probably had the worst center performance I've ever seen. He had more inaccurate snaps than snaps that were right in Bryce's hands. And I know Bryce is a shorter QB, but these snaps were out to his sides. Like they weren't going over his head or anything. Bryce called a timeout on one play and he still snapped the ball after that. Weird. He was very bad in pass pro. His run blocking was okay, and that compounded with Josh Nyman playing, who I think was adequate. Maybe that's how you could describe it. Not great. Looking at the pass and pass pro, a lot of free rushers. So the communication between Corbett, Bryce Young, the whole line wasn't there. And then once we got the ball, like on some plays, I think Bryce left some stuff on the field. The first interception, you can say whoever is at fault. I think Bryce shouldn't throw that ball in general. And then the fumble is 100% on him as well. And then I think the probably the worst non-Corbett player, Xavier Legette, just another Xavier Legette type game. Doesn't block in the run game. Uh, doesn't like take strides like a normal human when running. Like he still doesn't know how to run normally. That's how he didn't get his feet in on the one sideline throw. I just don't understand as an NFL receiver how you do that. And then just like lackadaisical in his routes. So this is just another game from him. Some of these things are easy fixes, like put Cade Mays in at center, who worked very well with Bryce down the stretch. When Bryce was having his good games, Cade Mays was the guy. Maybe be more prepared with your protections. Ikem Ekwonu should be back. But Xavier Legette, this is just another indefensible performance from him.
So we'll back up a little bit. You brought up the first pick where he's targeting Xavier Legette. He's lazy on the route. He's not fighting for the ball. The safety's crashing down. Again, Bryce Young should have never thrown that ball. But
I
when
will
you
give
talk
more
about
credit to the D. Like the DB made a really good play, but the ball shouldn't have been thrown in general.
what that's like, there's a difference between the Antonio Winfield great defensive back play where he comes over and he just blows up the play on the left hand side, and then that throw, because that again, it was still a poor decision. Yes, great play by the defender, but at some point, like you said, it goes back to being a poor decision on Bryce's part. That was the worst from an offensive standpoint, the worst negative play in terms of EPA, the expected points added. Then when you start looking at some of the other ones, the next one down is Bryce Young throwing out of the back of the end zone when there was the miscommunication with T Mac, Xavier on the rub route when you're trying to get a touchdown there. And I'm sorry, Bryce. Like, I know there's a couple defenders in front of you, but you got to understand that JT Sanders is coming across. Maybe find him, or you need to scramble and go pick it up. But throwing it out of the back of the end zone, I thought that was bad on Bryce's part. Again, like some of these miscues, and you look at the expected points added, like a lot of this goes on Bryce and Xavier Legette, and we were all supposed to be hype about this connection, and it's just not there. Then the third most lost play in terms of expected points added was the 3rd-and-1 sack the only sack he really took against Smoot. That really just ended the game. That was the nail in the coffin, because in the third quarter we were only down 2 possessions. We could get back by scoring a touchdown and being down 1 touchdown, and we could just never get over a hump. Like JC Horn had the interception at one point and put us right in their territory to kind of give us a chance to go get points, and we just could never convert. And so again, I don't know what's got to give. Like you said, maybe Cade Mays has to come in. Maybe you need Jalen Coker to come back. But at this point, like Adam Thielen, that trade is looking awful, because some of the throws that we had, the Hunter Renfrow, Thielen has brought those in over the past couple years. And are they entirely on Hunter Renfrow? No. The one across the middle was a hospital ball, and then the one down the left-hand sideline was an underthrow. If Bryce throws that a little bit sooner, Hunter Renfrow might be in the red zone and might be close to the end zone. And again, like this is the miscues that should have been cleaned up in preseason. But Dave Canales told us they didn't earn reps on the field. Well, did they earn them this past week? Because it didn't look like it. That's where I got to turn it over to you, Jacob, because like at this point, there is nothing that this team has done to show us that they're anything different than what we've seen the past couple of years.
If I'm not mistaken, the sack that Bryce took, that was a bad snap as well from Corbett. One of the many in that game. And to your point,
But it's just like if you throw an incompletion there, then at least maybe you have a shot to go out at 4th and 1. When you take a 12-yard
sure,
sack on third
sure.
and one, it's like you put yourself out of a position to even make that decision.
I agree. A lot of weird formations as well, like the one where there was a free rusher on the right side where T Mac's open for a touchdown, but Bryce gets hit because there's a free
Mm-hmm.
rusher. JT Sanders is lined up behind Rob Hunt, our right guard. And instead of being outside where a tight end would normally be, I don't really understand that one. Plus, Rico Dowdle's also in the backfield and just misses the assignment. A lot of those like free rusher plays, just the miscues and the whole didn't earn snaps thing in the preseason, whatever. All right, it's not a good thing that he said that, but my thing is the game that Dave Canales called the plays was not the game that the starters played. Like I feel like there would be they'd be more on the same page with a lot of things if Canales called the first two preseason games and Brad Idzik called the game where the backups played. That would make more sense to me because in season Dave Canales was calling the plays with the starters, right? That's just another baffling thing. At least they played more than one drive like we did in Buffalo 2 years ago. But yeah, a lot of concerns. The positives: Chuba steady as ever. Taylor Moton looks pretty good off of his extension, and T Mac Tedero McMillan, incredible start. Only 9 targets, 5 receptions for 60-ish or like 66 yards. The one in the end zone, I'm not going to blame him for, like the one-handed catch because he got interfered with. But he had the fantastic one on the sideline that they didn't call. That was a catch, by the way. If you go back and rewatch it, he needs 15 plus targets every single game because he was just routing up players, getting open, and winning when the ball was thrown to him. That's like the lone bright spot on the offense. Defense, of course, J.C. Horn is as talented as ever. He gave up 1 catch for 7 yards the entire game. So, and I think he was targeted as the closest defender on 3 targets. So, really good game from both of those guys. But as a whole, we got to be better because if Travis Etienne and Tank Bigsby had like 2 rushes, who's now in Philly, Bayshaw Tootin, if they were the guys getting 200 yards, guess how many yards that Kyler Murray and James Conner are going to get because Conner's one of the most efficient runners in the league.
And they just had a day themselves last week. James Conner, Trey Benson, they ran all over the Saints last week. And if you can't tighten up your gap scheme discipline, like you're gonna get run all over again. And so what changes between now and Sunday? I know Canales came out in some of the pressers and said the film is the film. That tells us who our identity is. That tells us where we need to work. Like I don't know what work you do in a matter of a week to fix giving up 200 yards, but hopefully there is some adjustment. We're going to Arizona. We've had success against them in the past, but it's hard to have any hope for this team as it stands. I mean, you brought up Chuba talking about positive plays. That was the highest expected points added play was that Chuba touchdown. But the one that I want to kind of draw attention to is the play right before that Chuba touchdown. And if we don't get that defensive holding, which was the third highest play that we had from an expected points added standpoint, where it would have been a pick six the other way, and we got a defensive holding, like that's huge. Like, because that's the difference between us getting in the end zone and scoring and actually looking like a semi decent squad in the box score and not being able to get in the end zone at all. And like that again, like I don't know what needs to get cleaned up because the Jacksonville Jaguars aren't world beaters. We talked about this last week. Like they probably at best are an average defense. So like you're going to see much better competition on that side throughout the rest of the year. And it's alarming. It's disheartening. And I don't know exactly where we're going from here. But the 7 wins that I think we were projecting early on in the year, like if you can't win early on, the slate gets a little bit harder. And yeah, I at this point, I'm just rambling, but I don't know where we go from here. Like at this point, like what the change is, because if you fire the defensive coordinator, like that's not going to fix the defense. And so like you then have to now have this whole shift of fixing the defense. And that doesn't even address all the offensive concerns we just saw.
I think playing the right players on defense can help fix it, and that's one of the things that's been talked about this week. Dave Canal said he's pushing for some of the younger guys to play.
But what does
You're
that
the head
mean? What
coach,
does that
so
mean?
you can. It means Nick Scott not getting 100% of the snaps.
And
He's a
Latham
net.
Ransom getting on the field and Princely
Yes,
Uman Milan and Nick
yes.
Scorton. But that's what I'm saying.
Princely,
Like,
who by the way only played 8 snaps, I believe, all in the first half. Didn't play a single lick in the second half, and then it was the opposite with Nick Scorton. Could also mean play like the nose tackle we signed in free agency actually playing the nose. But as far as the rest of the league goes, I don't think we were actually the worst team. There was one team that's like very clearly the worst, but last night I think we saw the two worst QBs, and one of them redeemed himself at the end of the game, but one of them, Caleb Williams, had just a terrible game. And I know that Caleb Williams is kind of your department. So if you're looking for Caleb Williams slander, you've come to the right place today. I'm going to open the floor up for Steve here because outside of that first drive, Williams was just all over the place, just spraying throws.
Even on that first drive, outside of the Roma Dunze throw, everything was thrown within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. And obviously, he has the scramble rushing touchdown, which is great. But after that, you could see him just panic in the pocket, and you can see him like see the first read come open, hesitate, and that split second hesitation, you can't make the throw now. And so at that point, he'd try to move out of the pocket, he'd try to find a check down. And at some point, like the Vikings were able to kind of cue in and just kind of clamp down on the Bears offense. And like they were gifted a touchdown from their defense at one point in this game. And so they didn't at one point score until the Vikings scored 27 points in terms of getting in the end zone. And that was the last touchdown that allowed the Bears to bring it within 3. But like again, like this is a guy that was hailed as being like the next Patrick Mahomes, and he has come in and just laid dud after dud. He can't throw catchable passes. He can't play within structure. And while all the off structure stuff is fun, it's tantalizing, it's not anything you can build around. His time to throw was longer last night than it was all of last year from an average standpoint. Obviously, you have to take in consideration sample size and what Ben Johnson is trying to do within this offense. But that's just, it's concerning that, like, yes, he did not have the sack issue that he had last year last night, but he definitely had the inaccuracy issues. And that's only going to keep happening because I think that's just who Caleb Williams is. Like, I know we didn't talk about this last week because the articles came out like towards the weekend, but Tyler Dune went in the depth about like some of the, I want to say limitations about Caleb Williams as a quarterback prospect, as a quarterback in the NFL, and he has limitations to his game.
I think the inaccuracy problem, and granted, it's just one game. I think it's worse, or it was worse last night than it was last year. And the concerning part to me is when you bring Ben Johnson in, it's supposed to bring stability. Again, this is one game. The Vikings are a very tricky defense to play against, right? Brian Flores is one of the better defensive play callers in the league, but there were so many open opportunities, especially late in the game. The one I'm thinking about is the DJ Moore down the left sideline. It's a walk-in touchdown. Caleb Williams sails him by about 5 yards. It lands out of bounds. Like it was to the point where Moore saw it and then just quit because he knew it was going out of bounds. He also threw a hospital ball to DJ Moore, who, in typical DJ Moore fashion, like went out of the game and then came back in 2 plays later and he was fine. Just a lot of misses. There were a couple throws that, like, there was one on the right sideline. The DB broke it up anyway, but he put it on the money. I think that was a good one. He didn't take the sacks, which I guess is better, but he also, again, held on to the ball forever. He took one really bad grounding, which is basically a sack, and just he didn't single-handedly lose them the game, but he was definitely the biggest negative factor because the defense did their job, right? He gave him a touchdown. They made J.J. McCarthy's life hell for 3 quarters. But just really poor outing from Caleb Williams. Also, to Ben Johnson's discredit, I will say, not kicking it out of bounds right there at the end is kind of funky to me. Like, I know what they were trying to do, like kick it out of the back of the end zone, but you should know if your kicker doesn't have the leg to do that. So instead of having, like, it would have been around 40 seconds, the end of the game with like 10 seconds to try to get in field goal range to tie the game. Weird decision by Ben Johnson, but the majority of the game, I would say, was on Caleb Williams.
Absolutely. I mean, this is a guy that like had the plays in front of him to make. Like you said, misses DJ Moore on a walk-in touchdown, missed DJ Moore on a conversion on a fourth down that would have put
In the
them,
red zone.
and that's kind of like we're talking about big pivotal plays where it's like the guy's open, you are making the correct read, you're not delivering an accurate pass. And you talk about like this being kind of like alarming and maybe a little bit more than last year. He was near the league lead in terms of yards missed and yards left on the field because he couldn't hit the broadside of a barn multiple times, whether he was trying to get the ball to Roma Dunze at that time, Keenan Allen and DJ Moore. And so like to think that that was going to change overnight, it's just wasn't the case. And the fact that I think one of his strong selling points, at least in college, was his ability to dominate the intermediate part of the field. And it's just he struggles there. He has some of the most like inaccurate incompletions across the middle of the field since last year. I'm trying to remember who posted it this morning, but like he leads the league in terms of incompletions that are inaccurate across the middle of the field. Like you can't do that at this level. You have to be able to diagnose and work that area. And the fact that he can't just shows that there's a gap between where he is and where he needs to be. And I think a lot of the alarm bells that are ringing, like we talk about this being a panic button kind of segment, I'm hitting the panic button. Like Ben Johnson didn't fix this. Like everybody thought, like, oh, after that first drive, like the Bears are back. Like the Bears are not back. And so I would not be surprised to see Tyson Bagent at some point if Caleb Williams continues on this trajectory.
And again, just 1 week, but through week one, Caleb Williams leads the league in off-target passing percentage, just around 23%. I think that's a very generous way of grading. It looked like a lot more. A game that had two really good quarterbacks, two MVP quarterbacks, Josh Allen and the Bills, Lamar Jackson, the Ravens. Incredible game, right? One of the better regular season games, at least over the last half decade or so. The panic, it's not necessarily a panic button, but I feel like this is another in a string of Ravens games where they have extremely favorable conditions and end up losing it somehow. I'm not saying it's all on like John Harbaugh's decision making on fourth down or anything, because Derrick Henry did fumble. That gave the Bills life there. But when you're up 15 with 4 minutes left and choose not to go for it on fourth down to essentially just win the game right there, I don't necessarily agree with that. I think the more panic inducing part of this is that this seems to be a string over the last couple of years with Josh, or not years, but throughout Harbaugh's career, where he has extremely favorable conditions and they tend to lose them at the end. What are your thoughts on the end of that game? And because we both thought that the Ravens would win before the game, even during the game, there was no point that I thought the Bills would win until the last two plays in which Jair Alexander had an all-time choke on back-to-back reps. But what are your thoughts on the end of the game there? Do you necessarily agree with not going for it on 4th and 3?
So when we talk about this team and where they were at in the game, like you're up 15 points and you do choke it away. Part of the ability for the Bills to get back in this game, and we aren't talking about enough, I think, is the Derrick Henry fumble. And he had the juice all game, destroyed the Bills on the ground, and had reason to pick up 3 yards on that fourth down. And so I think Todd Monken should have leaned into Derrick Henry. But I think ultimately what swayed them, and we've seen this on different clips that have come on through different like NFL film segments, but Harbaugh and Lamar Jackson having a discussion about going for it on fourth down. And John Harbaugh is always interested in like how Lamar feels about that situation. And Lamar Jackson, post game, whether or not this was true or not, said he did not feel comfortable going for on that fourth down because he was starting to cramp, which is a legit thing. We saw LeBron James cramp in the finals well over a decade now. And just that can be very serious. As an actual pro athlete, you're talking about a long 60-minute game. You're towards the end of that, and you just don't feel like you can go and make the play that you need to make as a player. So if that is the reason, I understand the reservation. However, it doesn't change the fact that you, I think, are the first team in NFL history that has blown a 15-point lead with like 4 minutes left. And that is unfortunate. And again, goes in the hall of Ravens blunders, which has been that past half decade with Lamar at quarterback, where they will go out to this insane lead and the other team will find a way to claw back and pull it off. And so this is something that they got to look themselves in the mirror and figure out, just like, hey, what are these errors and how do we fix them? And I think one of them does come back to that fourth down decision making. But I think moving forward, Harbaugh is always a guy that's going to lean to be a little bit more aggressive. I'm just more when we talk about like the coaching issues, I more worry about like Todd Monken. I feel he gets a little bit more conservative or sometimes too cute with the play calling when it gets to some of these situations, and it's not the dominant play calling that we see like in between the like first quarter and third quarter.
Absolutely. Again, this is probably the least concerning of the three panic button teams we're going to talk about here. The last team, I said that Caleb Williams and JJ McCarthy were the two worst QBs. They were second and third. Tua Tagovailoa was terrible in that Colts game. Just it's every time on red zone, and it would cut to it. Like it looked like he would go through his progressions and then find his receiver and throw it straight to the defensive back as if that were his intention. He was terrible. The offensive line was terrible, but we know that they've been bad like forever. That's kind of been the Mike McDaniel staple. The defense was also really bad as well. So like on all fronts, this was just a poor performance. They finally got their touchdown at the end with Devon Achane on a fourth down, but this might be the worst team in the league already, and I think that's a shock when you consider teams like the Saints put up a better fight, teams like the Browns put up a better fight, the Colts, who I don't think they're one of the worst teams in the league, but I think people projected them to be a top five pick, absolutely destroyed this team. The Dolphins should be slamming the panic button, and I think if we get like one or two more of these, Mike McDaniel, excuse me, is getting axed well or very early into the season.
I think I don't know if it was the AFC East breakdown show that we had, but I definitely did project Mike McDaniel being the first guy fired, and it was just because of the turmoil that has now leaked into the season. And the only reason why both of us had the Dolphins winning this game is we thought that the Colts were another dysfunctional franchise. Like Jim Irsay just died earlier this year. They had a very uninspiring quarterback camp battle that left a lot of us like wondering what was going to happen with this team. And then all of a sudden, you see what happened this past Sunday, and Lou Anarumo, all of a sudden, he has talent on the defense, and they're flying around making plays. Like he dropped Leitu Latu in coverage at one point, and Tua still threw him the ball. And like at that point, like it's wraps. Like you are not an NFL quarterback. You are a guy that is accurate, can throw an accurate pass, but you're a spot thrower. You're not able to diagnose what's going in front of you. This offensive line in Miami has never been good, so it's not like you can lean on the run game and look into some play action looks and have some of these deeper passing concepts. So it's just at this point the Dolphins saga with Mike McDaniel, Tua Tagovailoa, Tyreek Hill, it is coming to an end, and it will end at some point this year, and the Dolphins will be turning over a new leaf. So whether or not they're drafting a new quarterback, trying to ride it out with Tua moving forward, will be interesting to see. But when we talk about panic buttons, like if you lose to the Indianapolis Colts, like I think at this point, the way they did too, like defensively, they couldn't stop a single soul. And so we just talked about all the offensive issues. Like defensively, they couldn't stop anybody. And so, like, you look around the rest of the AFC, it's like you got to go up against the Jets twice. Did you just see what they did to the Steelers defense? You have to play the Bills twice. And I mean, Drake May like didn't look necessarily inspiring week one, but they aren't necessarily a squad you should write off either. So it's just this is the end of the road for this iteration of the Miami Dolphins.
Couldn't agree more. I think the even with Tua being that bad, the defensive front is the most concerning thing to me. You have Jalen Phillips, who's a former first rounder. They traded for Bradley Chubb back in the day. He was a top five pick. Chop Robinson was their first round pick 2 years ago. Kenneth Grant was their first round pick this past year. None of them did anything. Their best pass rusher was Matt Judon, who they signed a couple weeks ago, who had the orange sleeves on. I was so confused at the time when I saw it. It's like, who is that? He's pretty mad he can't wear the red sleeves, I'm sure. But you just mentioned teams that we like that were good, right? So shifting away from the panic button, some of the more surprising outcomes are teams players that we have a higher stock on after this week. The Jets and the Steelers, both of their quarterbacks played phenomenal. Starting with Aaron Rodgers, he looked like MVP 2020 Rodgers. He was dotting it up. DK Metcalf seems like a perfect natural fit within Arthur Smith's system. He was getting the tight ends involved. Jonnu Smith, in classic Jonnu Smith fashion, took like a little screen to the house. Ben Skoranek, I think that's how you say his name. I haven't seen him in years. He had a touchdown pass from Rodgers. They played really well. on the other side, I was more impressed with, just because I thought they wouldn't do as well, the Jets offense. Justin Fields was playing lights out as a passer first and foremost, and he was good as a runner. Brees Hall, building off his run game, played very, very well. And the player of the game, or the rookie of the week, I think, was Armand Membu, the rookie right tackle for the Jets. Completely neutralized TJ Watt in the pass game. So I think both teams, despite one team having to win, the Steelers won at the very end. Jalen Ramsey, who they traded for from the Dolphins, by the way, game-winning stop against Garrett Wilson. I think both teams surprised, were much better than we anticipated, and both of these teams might go further than some of us initially thought. I know I had the Jets as second in the division, so it wouldn't surprise me if they win 7 or 8 games. But the Steelers look like they can be that team, like we mentioned, that can win the 12, 13 regular season games and maybe get that playoff run started if Rodgers can continue to play like this.
And maybe that's the case. We'll have to see what the Jets defense looks like. Obviously, they have a couple bright spots, but there are definitely holes, and Arthur Smith was able to find ways to exploit that through the screen game and finding guys coming across the middle of the field. That was something Arthur Smith didn't have last year, was somebody who could operate that. And while a lot of the concerns around Rodgers was, is he able to play the way that we saw him with Matt LaFleur? Is he able to operate throughout the whole field, or is he going to want to just take his slot fade shots and check downs and just kind of operate like he did in New York? And so to see him come out and have a more robust passing profile, I think was huge. When you saw the fact that he got Ben Skoranek involved, Calvin Austin got involved, DK Metcalf, some of the tight ends that got involved, Jalen Warren and Kenneth Gainwell's kind of contribution, you feel excited about where the Steelers are heading, and you want to keep seeing that head in the upwards direction. So we'll see if that's the case for this group. I think when you look at the Jets, they were always going to be a feisty bunch. And Justin Fields played very admirably. These were both revenge games for both Rodgers and Fields as they swapped teams this offseason. But it was the pass at the end. He was a touch too late getting the ball to Garrett Wilson. And for me, where we talk about the Steelers being that 12-13 win team, it's having a guy like Jalen Ramsey who could come over and just lay the wood as the ball was going in the Garrett Wilson's hands and force the incompletion. And that's what the game ended on with the fourth down. And so those kind of plays, those kind of playmakers, I think the Steelers have. It's just a matter of keeping everybody healthy for a full 17 games and then for a playoff run if you really are trying to make that Super Bowl push.
And it's interesting between these two quarterbacks because Rodgers had the lowest time to throw of any quarterback this week, and Fields was tied for second highest with Caleb Williams. Their disparity's kind of funny as well, considering Fields much better passer now and coming from the Bears. Jalen Hurts had the most time to throw. I think unsurprisingly, he was scrambling like every single play. But I think we talk about a playoff run with the Steelers. And I know this is one game, but I think this Rodgers is probably the best QB performance they've had since like 2019. I think if he can extrapolate even just a little bit lesser version of this over 17 games, much better outlook for the playoffs than they have had in previous years. Next team that we want to talk about here was the team that destroyed the Dolphins, the Indianapolis Colts. Indiana Jones, as they're calling him now. He's not Danny Dimes anymore. He left that nickname in New York and maybe in Minnesota when he was there. But Indiana Jones, very, very good game. I know the Dolphins secondary isn't the best, but like I mentioned maybe 5 minutes ago, they have dudes on that defensive front, and Jones was able to run past them, neutralize them, and just distribute the ball to everybody. He got everyone involved, especially Tyler Warren, the rookie tight end. He looks like he could be the focal point of the offense. But what do you think about Daniel Jones's performance in the Colts as a whole?
I think this is what we anticipated, kind of like this team's floor being with an just like an adequate passer in the room,
Right.
because you have so much talent on the outside. You have Tyler Warren that you mentioned that you brought in that's going to help some of the RPO stuff that this offense is going to try to deploy, and they were able to take advantage of it. You saw Michael Pittman ate. There were a couple deep shots to guys like Alec Pierce. Obviously, you didn't connect on everything, but just you saw a whole variety, and I think you saw Daniel Jones adequately like work well in the system. We're going to see if that changes when the competition level goes up. Like, does that look the same when you play a team like the Houston Texans? Because they're going to be able to generate a lot of pressure. And I think that's really the big difference with Daniel Jones. Like, obviously, he mitigated it well against Miami, had 7 consecutive scoring drives before he came off. The only person to do that, I believe, not only this year, but going back a ways. And so, like, that's impressive. That's an impressive feat. But it's just like, can you do that against some of these better defenses? And if you can't, then that's where we're going to start to see the cracks in the Indianapolis Colts.
To that note, can you guess who they play next week or this week?
I would say, since I've been bringing up the Texans, they're playing the Texans, but I'm probably wrong.
I would say it's the only defense better. They are playing the Denver Broncos this upcoming week. So
Ooh,
pretty
that's a
rough
rematch from
outlook
last
there.
year.
It
Which, if,
is.
if you don't remember, Anthony Richardson kind of sold that game. So I
Yes,
could see the Colts kind of
he
pulling
sold
that
it,
off.
and that was the, I believe, AD Mitchell trick play, and he threw a pick six because it was a double pass. Just really weird game. They had it in the bag, but maybe they do get the revenge for that one. Just Colts as a whole looked pretty good. The last team, the LA Chargers, on every front, I think dominated the Chiefs. Obviously, we got some Mahomes magic to make it close at the end. But the Chiefs' defensive line in particular, I think played very well. Justin Herbert, 300-yard, 3 touchdown game. He was very, very good. I think Joe Alt was probably the best player on that field in that game, and he just neutralized George Karlaftis, Chris Jones whenever Chris Jones was lined up wide, and any other blitz that came from that side. He gave Herbert a lot of time to operate, and as a whole, the Chargers offense was able to move the ball on a defense that, like I said in the offseason, I do have concerns with. But what's your take on the Chargers? Should the Chiefs be in that panic button group now that Worthy and Rice aren't going to be playing the next couple weeks?
I think you hit the panic button if you drop to like 0-2, 0-3, which puts a
When
lot
you
of
know who
weight
they're
on this
playing this
Eagles
week,
game.
right?
It's the Philadelphia
Mm-hmm.
Eagles. But they're like, and you'll remember this in 2009 after we got our teeth bashed in the playoffs. Like, we took it to the Cardinals the next year. Like, I think there are enough guys on this Chiefs team that are going to take it personally. And while I think the Eagles are definitely talented, that's something that I think will be in the Chiefs' corner, especially coming off this loss. You want to find the mojo to win, but we'll see if they have any answers, because it looked like their offense was struggling, like you said, with Xavier Worthy out. But I think that's also a testament to just the Chargers. I mean, Jesse Minter is a phenomenal coach. He has been able to work wonders with that group and was able to take away a lot of what the Chiefs wanted to do. And I I want to say, at least from the offensive standpoint, we haven't seen this kind of gusto from a Greg Roman offense where they just want to drop back and pass. And maybe that's what the Chiefs were doing. They were daring the Chargers to drop back and pass, but that's exactly what Herbert did. And I think it's the Madison Beer post boost. I can't post. Holy shoot. But the boost that she provides with dating Justin Herbert, who is one of the most eligible bachelors in America. We saw them out recently at a club or a function, and Joe Walt was there, and he played exceptionally well. So clearly, whatever this celebrity magic is, it has been rubbing off on those two, and hopefully that continues, because the Chargers have been known to be a franchise full of unluck, and this, so have a little bit going their way, I think is a change of pace that they are enjoying.
The I guess the Taylor Swift boost for Kelsey isn't staying around like it did a couple seasons ago. Kelsey did have a
He
touchdown,
he
but
got the touchdown.
he had one, but he also had a walk-in touchdown that he kind of just stopped on the route there, and that could have made a difference in the game. Who knows? The Chiefs ultimately would have to go and score again, but I think that's gonna wrap it up as we get into takes territory here. And mine's going to be along the lines of something we just talked about with the stock up. I was negative at the beginning with the Panthers. I want to be positive now. I know it's 1 week, but I'm going to say that Daniel Jones does not lose his starter status unless he's injured. I think his play will keep him as the starter throughout the year, unless, of course, he gets hurt or injured and Anthony Richardson has to step in. The reason that they did so well, and he did play like pretty well to his standard, it wasn't because he made these incredible plays. It was because he made the right decisions. He was able to hit receivers short and in the intermediate game, and that's exactly what they were missing with Anthony Richardson. He also provided some stuff with his legs too. But as a quarterback that can operate a talented infrastructure around him, he did exactly what they needed him to. and he's going to continue to do that and keep his starting job throughout the year.
You know what? I said it earlier. I'm not a fan of this guy. I know this is perfect takes. It's not hot takes. I think Daniel Jones keeping his job is well within reason. I'm going a little off the hip here. I'm reacting to what happened last night, but I think we have enough evidence from last year to suggest that this isn't like an anomaly. Caleb Williams will be benched at some point this season, and whether or not they write it off as a sore shoulder that he's been playing through for a couple weeks or whatever, Tyson Bagent will come in at some point this year because it's going to be abysmal. Like you couldn't pull it off against the Vikings after having a substantial lead, like not being able to hold a lead, not being able to come back in that game, and it is really going on the quarterback's shoulders. Like the plays were there to be made, and I think Caleb Williams is just not cut out to be an NFL quarterback. So that's my take. I'm going to keep doubling down on my Caleb Williams takes, and we'll see how far we can ride him out.
So they played Detroit this week in Detroit. Detroit's defense did not look very good against the Packers, so maybe there's an opportunity there for the Bears to get the win. If they lose, they'll be 0-2. If you recall last year, that's when Dave Canales benched Bryce Young. I wonder if Ben Johnson will have the guts to do it if almost said Caleb Johnson, Caleb Williams continues to just keep spraying throws and missing receivers. But we will have to see. I like that one a lot. He just didn't play well, despite what fantasy points will tell you or what a box score might show you. He was all over the place, and if that doesn't change, they're gonna have to bench him because the defense is good enough to win games. It looked like what would that be? The second half of 2022 Eberflus defense that was first in scoring, first in EPA. I don't know if they were that good, but they were pretty good last
And they
night.
were good to start last year. I like
Mhm.
when they started 4-2 because remember the Bears had a winning record to start the year. Like that's what a lot of people keep forgetting. Like they were doing a lot of good things until that Washington Commanders game.
And following that game, they would lose 10 straight and eke out a win on a game-winning field goal against the Green Bay Packers. That was their first one in Lambeau in like 15 years too. So it was a weird game. But Daniel Jones doesn't get benched. Caleb Williams does. Those are our takes for this week. Thursday, we'll preview some of the games. Definitely the Panthers game. How slim the odds might be for a Panthers win. I'm not as worried because we dominate the Cardinals. Now, if they like just destroy us, that's alarm bells like crazy. But we'll have to see. But until Thursday, you can find us on our socials on Twitter, excuse me, Spotify, Apple Podcast. And until Thursday, keep pounding.